Good evening, friends. Today, we look at the predictions of Nostradamus and whether he really predicted the Chinese virus or COVID and what else lies in store for us in 2021. Nostradamus, as most of us know, was a French astrologer and physician and the most widely read seer of the Renaissance period. Let me give you a small brief about his life. Most of us have read a lot about him and seen many of his documentaries. For those who are, have not read much, this is a bit of a brief about his life. Nostradamus began his medical practice in Agen sometime in 1530s, despite not only never having taken a medical degree, but also having apparently been expelled from medical school. In 1544, he moved to Salon, where he gained renown for his innovative medical treatments during outbreaks of the plague at Aix and Lyon in 1546-47. He began making prophecies about 1547, which he published in 1555 in a book entitled Centuries. The work consisted of rhymed quatrains grouped in hundreds, each set of 100 called a century. Astrology was then at a peak, and an enlarged second edition dedicated to the French king appeared in 1558. Some of his prophecies appeared to be fulfilled, and his fame became so widespread that he was invited to the court of Catherine de Médicis, queen consort of Henry II of France, where he cast the horoscopes of her children. He was appointed physician in ordinary by Charles in 1564. What is strange is that Nostradamus even predicted his death. His last words were, "Tomorrow I shall no longer be here." With us today are all the predictions that he has made, most of which has eerily come true. Over the past few years, there have been various predictions that have not only been scary, but have also hit the nail on the head. On the evening of July 1st, 1566, he allegedly told his secretary, Jean de Chevigny, "Tomorrow at sunrise, I shall no longer be here." The next morning, he was reportedly found dead on the floor next to his bed. For much of his adult life, he suffered from gout and arthritis. And in the last few years of his life, the condition turned into edema or dropsy, where abnormal amounts of fluid accumulates beneath the skin or within the cavities of the body. Without treatment, the condition resulted in congestive heart failure. Most of Nostradamus' life composed of disasters such as plagues, earthquakes, wars, floods, invasions, murders, drought, and battles. Can you imagine having witnessed all of this? He has been credited with predicting numerous significant events, including the French Revolution, the rise of Napoleon and Hitler, the development of the atomic bomb, and the 9/11 terrorist attack on the World Trade Center. Let me read some of his prominent predictions that came true. First was the prediction of the death of King Henry II of France. He wrote in verse, "The young lion will overcome the older one on the field of combat in a single battle. He will pierce his eyes through a golden cage. 2 wounds made one, then he dies a cruel death." So what happened? In the summer of 1559, King Henry II of France, the older one, lined up to joust the Comte de Montgomery, the young lion, 6 years his junior, on the fields of France. So in the verse it's written, field of combat. Both had lions on their shields. In their final phase, Montgomery's lance tilted up and burst through the king's screen, splintering to pieces. 2 shards, one through the eye, pierce his eyes through a golden cage, is what he wrote, and one through his temple, lodged in the king's head. What Nostradamus had written, 2 wounds made one. Henry suffered for 10 days. And he said, then he dies a cruel death before dying in his bed. The second prediction was the Great Fire of London. The blood of the just will be demanded of London, burnt by fire in the year 66. The ancient lady will fall from a high place, and many of the same sect will be killed. So what happened? The small fire that started in the bakery of Thomas Farina on Pudding Lane in London, September 2, 1666, turned into a 3-day blaze that consumed the city. One of the explanations for the blood of the just refers to the millions of flea-carrying rats that were killed. Peasant deaths were not recorded at that time, but it has been long held that 6 people perished in the fire. Next came the prediction about the French Revolution. From the enslaved populace, songs, chants, and demands, while princes and lords are held captives in prisons, these will, in the future, by headless idiots, be received as divine prayers. So what happened? In 1789, the French people decided they had enough of poor aristocratic rule and revolted. The peasants, which he wrote as enslaved populace, took control of Paris and forced their demands on royalty. The aristocracy were taken from power, were locked in the Bastille prisons, and beheaded at the guillotine. And that, he refers to them, Nostradamus refers to them as headless idiots. Next prediction was Napoleon. Pau, nay Laurent, will be more of fire than of blood. To swim in praise, the great one to flee to the confluence. He will refuse entry to the Pisces. The depraved ones and the Durance will keep them imprisoned. So what happened? These are 3 towns, Pau, Ney, and Oloron in southern France. The capitalization hints that something is hidden within the words and to look further. Rearranging them spells out Napoleon Roy or Napoleon, the king in French. More of fire than of blood refers to Napoleon's non-noble lineage, and the refused entry to the Pisces speaks to Popes Pius that 6th and 7th, both imprisoned by Napoleon. Next came the prediction on Hitler. From the depths of the west of Europe, a young child will be born of poor people. He who, by his tongue, will seduce a great troop. His fame will increase towards the realm of the east. He also wrote, beasts ferocious with hunger will cross the rivers. The greater part of the battlefield will be against Hester. Into a cage of iron will the great one be drawn, when the child of Germany observes nothing. What happened? On April 20th, 1889, Hitler was born in Western Europe to very poor parents. Hitler moved Germany to action in the years following the World War I, in part, who by his tongue, it writes, he's written, through his over-the-top oratory skills. The Axis alliance with Japan in the east, Hester is believed to be a spelling error. The German army invaded France, in bracket, its beasts ferocious with hunger will cross the river, he wrote. And the greater battlefield refers to the Allied powers defeating Hitler. In the case of the atomic bomb, he said he had written, near the gates and within the 2 cities, there will be scourges, the like of which was never seen. Famine within plague, people put out by steel, crying to the great immortal God for relief. What happened? In early August 1945, the United States dropped 2 atomic weapons on the island of Japan, in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The suffering endured by those in the blast and the radiation poisoning suffered by those who escaped the immediate detonation, where he had written in verse, crying to the great immortal God for relief. Next was the prediction of John Kennedy. The great man will be struck down in the day by a thunderbolt, an evil deed foretold by the bearer of a petition. According to the prediction, another falls at night time, conflict at Reims, London, and a pestilence in Tuscany. What happened? The great man John Kennedy received numerous death threats and was gunned down in the afternoon of November 22, 1963. Bobby Kennedy was killed just after midnight on June 5th, 1968. Another falls at nighttime, he wrote. The world mourned. Another prediction was the 9/11 attack on the Twin Towers in New York. Earth-shaking fire from the center of the earth will cause tremors around the new city. 2 great rocks will war for a long time. Then Arethusa will redden a new river. What happened? On the morning of September 11, 2001, the 2 towers, 2 great rocks of the World Trade Center were attacked in New York City. Like most people who predict the future, he too had a number of detractors. Many people believed that due to the vagueness of Nostradamus' writing and the lack of specific dates, it is easy to quote him after any such event and retrospectively claim they are true. Some scholars believe that he was not writing to be a prophet, but writing to comment on the events of his time and his people. Whatever his methods or intentions may be, Nostradamus' timeless predictions continues to make him popular. Those who continue to seek answers to life's most difficult questions. With regards to the Chinese virus that hit the world last year, there is an interesting article written by Ray Alexandra, where she says, perhaps Nostradamus predicted coronavirus after all. Nostradamus wrote in the year 1551. Please listen to this. There will be a twin year, which is 2020, from which will arise a queen, in bracket Corona, who will come from the east, which is China, and who will predict a plague, which is the virus, in the darkness of the night on country with 7 hills, Italy, and will transform the twilight of men into dust, which means death, to destroy and ruin the world. It will be the end of the world economy, as you know. Nostradamus was notoriously vague in many of the predictions he made in his 1555 book. But even after nearly 5 centuries, humans still find themselves turning to his writings in times of woe, probably because of what he did get right. The Prophecies of Nostradamus by Erika Cheetham is a complete translation of the original text, which was first published in 1973. And she Ray writes that, naturally, I just happened to have a copy lying around for lockdown. And today I found both a reference to plague, lightning, and hail at the end of March. And more importantly, this. In the feeble lists, great calamity through America and Lombardy, the fire in the ship, plague and captivity, Mercury in Sagittarius, Saturn warning. We can all understand the references to plague and captivity at this point, but everything else in this passage lines up too, assuming the feeble lists refer to the sick and the dead. America and Italy, they've written Lombardy is a region in the north of the country, are in the top 3 most infected countries so far, along with Spain. Mercury entered Sagittarius in December 2019, which is when the first cases of coronavirus occurred. And Saturn moved into Aquarius on March 21, right as New York City was going into lockdown. As for the fire in the ship, multiple cruise liners have become stranded at sea during this crisis due to coronavirus emergencies on board. This included the Grand Princess, which docked in 21 confirmed coronavirus cases on board. And Nostradamus has some terrifying prophecies for 2021, friends. According to Mirror, he predicts everything from a zombie apocalypse to a comet hitting Earth and even solar storms. Here, we look at his top 6 prophecies from what the next 12 months could have in store. We are talking about 2021, and this is from a report in Mirror. According to the 16th century astrologer, a scientist from Russia will create a biological weapon that could be very bad news for humanity. The weapon will create a virus that will turn people into zombies and will eventually leave us extinct. Here's what he said. Few young people, half dead to give a start, dead through spite. He will cause the others to shine, and in an exalted place, some great evils to occur. Sad concepts will come to harm each one. Temporal dignified. The masked to succeed, fathers and mothers dead of infinite sorrows, women in mourning, the pestilent she-monster, the great one to be no more, all the world to end. As if this isn't enough, Nostradamus also believed the earth would be hit with a famine of biblical proportions. This is another of his predictions about the end of the world. It starts with increased earthquakes and the spread of viruses, something we all know far too much about in these years. Another of the indicators, according to Nostradamus, is a massive famine, the size of which the world has never seen before. He said, "After great trouble for humanity, a greater one is prepared. The great mover renews the ages. Rain, blood, milk, famine, steel, and plague. Is the heavens fire seen? A long spark running." So he's talking about solar storms. Huge damage will be caused to our planet in 2021, claims Nostradamus, by huge solar storms. In the yearly horoscope claim, he said, "We shall see the water rising and the earth falling under it." As the devastation manifests itself across the globe, the doctor says there will be mass migration and people living on earth will start to fight over the few remaining natural resources. This will also lead to war across the planet. Not only will the world suffer the impact of a comet, Nostradamus also says this could also cause a huge number of natural disasters. He wrote, "In the sky, one sees fire and a long trail of sparks." After 2020, the last thing we need is another natural disaster, the writer writes. However, he predicts bad news if you live in California. Nostradamus claims a huge earthquake will hit America, and California is where those who interpret his work believe will hit. And he's even predicted the date, November 25th, 2021. This passage reads, "The sloping park, great calamity, through the lands of West and Lombardy. The fire in the ship, plague and captivity, Mercury in Sagittarius, Saturn fading. Soldiers will have chips implanted into their brains. The rise of technology in the 21st century is something we're all getting used to, with artificial intelligence in most of our homes and tiny computers in our pockets. But according to Nostradamus, this will be really ramped up in 2021, with soldiers having chips implanted into their brains." He wrote, "The newly made one will lead the army, almost cut off up to near the bank. Help from the Milanese elite straining. The Duke deprived of his eyes in Milan in an iron cage. These new super soldiers will apparently be needed to save the human race and will lead the armed forces." All of which suggests that Nostradamus did see this coming after all. He's also, as you see, predicted an imminent zombie apocalypse. The year of the great seventh number accomplished, it will appear at the time of the games of slaughter, not far from the age of the great millennium, when the dead will come out of their graves. Something perhaps in 2027. Interestingly, friends, in the midst of all this, he also published a cookbook. One of Nostradamus' oldest publications was titled Treatise on Cosmetics and Conserves. In addition to recipes of medical concoctions, such as laxatives and a rose pill lozenge to treat the plague, the book contained recipes to make blonde hair dye, toothpaste, which is made out of using ground cuttlefish bone and sea snail shells, or if your teeth are really rotten, and decayed blue clay, marzipan paste, candied orange peel, marmalade, cherry jam, pear preserve, and quince jelly, fit to set before a king. The book also contained a love jam made from mandrake apples, sparrow's blood, and islets from the arms of an octopus, among other strange things. The love jam would be so powerful that it would induce a burning of a heart to perform the love act, when the concoction combined with saliva is in the midst of a kiss. For those of you who are interested to know more about him, there is a movie called Nostradamus, directed by Roger Christian in 1994, which explores the story. The film recounts the life and loves of the physician, astrologer, and famed prognosticator, his encounters with medieval science of the University of Montpellier and the Inquisition, and his early struggles with his visions of the future. The film is set in France in the 16th century. The film depicts Nostradamus' rise in influence because of both his success in treating plague and his predictions culminating in his appointment as court physician to Charles of France, son of Henry II. According to Brian Dunning, a renowned skeptic and host of the Skeptoid podcast, anyone who claims to have interpreted Nostradamus' vague passages does so with a great deal of hindsight. He said on his podcast, "How accurate are his predictions? You can fill a library with books claiming to match quatrains with major events in world history. All, of course, deciphered and published after those events occurred. The straight fact is that nobody has ever used his writings to predict a future event in specific terms which later came true. That is all for tonight, friends. Let me just have a look at your comments as well. One second. Good evening, Drew. Geeta, good evening. He even predicted his own death. Also heard that it's danger to read his book completely. Your views on this, man? No, I don't think that's true. The second part isn't true. The first part we already discussed, spoke about. Rosita, hi Meena. I'm from Netherlands. I like your sessions. Doing a great job. Thank you, Rosita. Ritukar, very good evening. Har Har Mahadev. I watch your sessions later or same time. Thank you, Ritu. Thank you, Nitin. I've seen his movie. Yes. The Men Who Show tomorrow. Hello, Nancy. Hello, Bharti. Welcome. Hello, Ashish. Good evening, Meena. I've recently seen a video of a medium talking with Nostradamus where he's saying he did get directly his quoted poems from God. Unfortunately, it's a channel in French. Still, also don't forget the fact that he was an astrologer. The science of astrology is a very strong area. So I'm sure he would have made many of his predictions in that manner also, just like Indian astrologers do. Nitin, his prophecy in poem form. Yes, in verse form. Real name of Nostradamus, Teller says in Latin language books was Michel de Notre Dame, which means Michelle of Our Lady, Mother of Jesus. Name his family took when turned to Christian from Jewish church. Okay. His house is still there and has become a museum in Salon de Provence, southeast of France, in a touristic area. Thank you, Stella. I remember he was speaking about divine avatar who would be born in India and worshipped on Thursday. Lena, good evening. Thank you for joining, Rochelle. Very good evening, Jay. Geeta, Sashi, I think it's his name only, Prophecies of Nostradamus, the book. She's talking about the book. Sonam, good evening, Sonam. Neetu, good evening. Thank you. Welcome, Purna. Thank you, Neetu. Good evening, Purna. Thank you, Sanjay, for joining. Good evening, NC. Charlotte, good evening, Charlotte. Rani, good evening, ma'am. Lovely topic which we need to learn about. Love South Africa. Thank you for joining me, Rani. Thank you, Sharmila. Interesting. Ned. Good evening, ma'am. I love all your way. Thank you, Priya. Darshini, see, it's because of your, support that these channels, become popular. So thank you for that. Nancy, oh, as if we people all of the world aren't all. Yes, Nancy, this sometimes it sounds so depressing. Hindus must unite. Very important sports. Very important. Never learn from history, yes. Hindus wake up before it's too late. Hi, Meena ma'am. This is Sunanda from New Jersey. I look forward to watching your show. Thank you so much, Sunanda, for joining. Nancy, you're right. It's high time, yes. But also, Nancy, see, let us respect each religion. I mean, there is, what do you say, extremism in every form of religion. So let's not get into that here. Priyadarshini, unless Hindus get together. Good evening, Jas. Hi, Suman. Yes, true, Nancy. Sharmila, very interesting. Divine living, it means Position will be scary this year too, as per Nostradamus. Yes. Thank you, Sanjay. Very good session. Nancy Su, thank you, Meena, for this informative. Thank you, Nancy Su, always for coming out with interesting comments as well. Seema, love your sessions. Really authentic information. Thank you, Seema, so much. Thank you for joining. Good evening, Rash. Sunanda, we Hindus must fight for ourselves so that no one manipulates us. We Indians are spread everywhere in the world and we're true. Hello, man. Thanks for the lovely topics. Thanks, Yvonne. Is it possible that whatever has been written in these books are implemented to prove some religion right? Uh, See, I would not say I would not slot Nostradamus into any religion. I would say that he was a very intelligent astrologer, a physician, and sometimes people have visions, and this man seems to be very, he must be having extra visions. See, a lot of us, even in India, see if you look at it, what are you talking about? You're talking about Kali Yuga. This has all been predicted in our books. Whether it is Bhagavad Gita, or, all our Hindu books. So there are a lot of people who can see into the future. These people have a certain vision. So I wouldn't say that it's only related to religion. Mahesh, good evening. I really hope that false, but Israel and Palestine will turn worse. Ultimately, conflict of Muslim world, China and rest of the world. Mahesh, I think even the Palestinians are condemning this Hamas group. I think this Hamas group is deliberately trying to make problem for Palestine. It could also be in that way, trying to put them into problem. See how these terrorist groups work. Uma Dodi, very interesting session. Could you give me the name of the movie again? It's Nostradamus. It's a French movie, Uma, and I'll again mention it in the comments so that you can see it. Shalay, wonderful. Thank you, Shalay. Sanjat, your pace is ideal, not too fast. Thank you, Sanjat, for always supporting. Ma'am, your way of presentation is very crisp and always interesting. So love to watch your sessions. Thank you, Rash. Nancy, thank you. Love you and the way you present. Thank you so much, Samya, for being present. Yes, please invite Sushant Sari to discuss. Sure, I'll do that. Nancy, very informative. Thank you. Sharmila, lovely collection. Thank you so much. That's on the side, isn't it, Sharmila? So sweet of you. Uma, Meena ma'am, could you please let me know that? Yes, I will put it in the comments, comment box. Uma, just let me end the session and I'll do that. He was fighting against pesta disease with herbal essences, but had lost all children. Yeah, Stella, you seem to have read it in detail. Well done. Sports, please discuss violence against. Yes, we will. I'll try to get a good speaker on this sports star. What is the name of this astrologer man? You're talking about Nostradamus, NC, or somebody else? Your sessions are eagerly awaited, informative, and very soothing and to the point. Thank you, friends, for this session, and look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And also, friends, tomorrow there'll be a session with Sandeep Fogat, where Savio and I will join him at 6:30. So if you're interested, please tune on to that. Thank you so much, and good night.